So I was talking about the 6 lies, and I'm not going to go over all of them, but a couple that really stood out to me. Number one was that everything matters equally. And Gary Keller and Jay Papasan talk about this in reflection to the 80-20 rule, as we know it, or Pareto's principle, which is that it's a law of nature that 20% of the wealthiest people own 80% of the land. And they give various other examples of how that's generally true. And the percentages might change a little bit, but generally 20% of your effort is yielding 80% of your results. 20% of your customers are yielding the largest portion of your profit. And 20% of your ideas will yield the largest growth or expansion or whatever it might be. And so you want to be focusing on identifying that 20%. And what I really loved about this is the way they applied it to your to-do list. Because if you are like me, your to-do list is a mile long, and those are just the things I wrote down. I actually have different kinds of to-do lists. I have to-do lists for leads. I have to-do lists for operations. I have to-do lists for marketing. And the principle here is that a to-do list doesn't necessarily give you results. It's usually driven by the first thing to come to mind was the first thing on the list. It's not targeting at a goal. And you need to take your to-do list and turn it into a success list by applying the 80% rule, the 80-20 rule. So if I can only do half of these things, or in the case of the 80-20 rule, 1 out of these 5 things or 2 out of these 10 things, what are the ones that are going to yield me the best results and take me the furthest? What are going to have the biggest impact? Okay, I've narrowed my list down to 4. Now, which one of these is the most important? And we get to the one thing. Take the 80-20 rule and go to the extreme. And then in the book, they talk about the opposite effect that happens, which is in order to say yes to that one thing, something else has to say no. And you have to get better at saying no. And they give a lot of suggestions and tools for that. But that ultimately, that's what's going to yield more success for you is saying yes to the right things and saying no to other things. And so that has been a huge lesson for me is taking my to-do list, turning it into a success list, and working harder and harder at saying no. Another one of the lies is multitasking. We've kind of been taught in today's society that a computer can multitask and we should be able to also. And that's just not true. It took a little bit of convincing for me to believe this one. We can juggle, we can walk and talk and chew gum. And they explain why some of that works and it's not really multitasking. But to really focus on something and to give it the attention it deserves, if you think you're multitasking, what you're actually doing is task switching. And you're losing time and you're losing energy and focus by switching and reloading the rules. I'm switching to this task, and so now I have to go back. And sometimes it's just a little bit here and there, but it really adds up. And sometimes it's a lot. I mean, you can lose an entire day's worth of progress because you have to reorient yourself on a bigger project. There's some interesting statistics in the book about how much time is lost in the office, in the average American office, just by task switching. And I want to say it's like 30%. I mean, it's absolutely crazy to think about. So multitasking is a lie. Stay focused on one thing.